Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.
Hey there, People Centric leaders. It's Bethany Taff from People Centric. We get to talk with you all today about something that has been coming up often on our team. And sometimes we don't know why. I think it's funny. We'll talk about, hey, we've been hearing this a lot from lots of different industries, from lots of different people. And I don't know why. I don't know that it's necessarily something that's being like talked about in the, on the internet, but it seems like it's coming up a lot. And so today that topic is specifically, how do we know when to hire based on our organization's capacity or our team's capacity? How do we know what our capacity even is, other than just by feeling it feels really busy right now? And so there's probably a cleaner title for this that we'll figure out. But that's basically the topic, is how do we figure that out? So we've had people come to us and say, yeah, our team feels like we're on fire. It feels like everything's on fire right now. And we're struggling as a team to maybe get things done in a timely manner or to communicate well with each other. And so it feels like maybe we're missing somebody or some people on the team, but like we don't have a true way to measure our capacity to be able to say, here's when we should pull the trigger and hire. And so I'd love to hear from our team about that in a minute, but who is on this podcast with us? I'm so glad you asked. Diana Royalty is the first person that I'm gonna say hello to. So, hey, Diana.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I feel like our team is, the team that's recording today, I feel like we just have a little bit of like, I don't know how, like our energy is a little weird today.
We spent 30 minutes not talking about the podcast before the podcast recording. So
like very not related to the podcast.
Yeah. And it's a Friday. It's Friday afternoon. We're just sort of, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon and we're all just like ready for a break, I think. Our energy is weird.
There's a lot happening in the world. Yeah. A little spicy.
Spicy is a good word for it. That's a good word for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good.
Like sleepy spice. I would like that to be my new nickname. Like I'm tired, but I'm also very sassy about things.
Yeah. Stephanie Anderson has entered the chat.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
So you guys are getting a great group today. So I don't know, have you guys been hearing this kind of theme come up as well with clients and with just people that we know?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other day, Stephanie and I were on a call and it wasn't necessarily the leaders asking when they should hire, but it was sort of the leaders being like, my people keep saying that they are too busy and and look at their desk, it's a mess. And like, is it time management? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right systems? I don't know, but they're all saying they're very busy and we're missing deadlines. And I'm frustrated by that. And I think we've all heard individuals say that thing, like, I am missing deadlines. I am very busy. I have too much on my plate. But it's sort of that balance of like, do you have too much on your plate? Is it interruptions? Is it time management? Is it email management? Is it the tools that you have? Or is it really just that like you are overloaded and you have too much work on your plate?
Right.
Yeah. I've been hearing this as well. And just to share like an example from another perspective on this is I'm also hearing from some leaders, like everyone keeps coming to me and saying, we need to add roles and we need to add roles. And I'm looking at the amount of work that we're doing and they just don't know how good they have it. Cause man, 5 or 10 years ago at our company, everybody walked to school uphill both ways. And we did it without all these fancy tools and CRMs and chat GPTs. And so they just need to like suck it up because this is work and work is hard. And so we're looking at them and saying like, well, is that true? Like, do you just have a bunch of lazy, whiny people on your team? And they're like, no, our team is amazing and wonderful. This is the most talented team we've ever had. But we're not accomplishing as much as we used to. And everybody's telling me that they're maxed out and they can't make any more decisions today. And we just have too much work on our plates. And so I think that's the other thing we're hearing is like companies are investing a lot in tools and trying to become more efficient. And sometimes like it's not really leading to the team being more efficient, or they're seeing quality decreases when they're implementing new tools.
Yeah, my biggest flex lately is that I got a master's degree without AI.
That is pretty.
I mean, a really big achievement, honestly, that we all made it through college and you a master's degree
Without
with no
chat
AI,
GPT.
no chat GPT. Yeah.
I feel like we're a different breed now.
Well, we will be. We will be, I think, for sure.
Yeah, if we're not, we're about to be with the newest generations entering the workforce.
Right?
Which I don't know if it's bad or I don't know. Work
I don't know
smart,
either. But
harder.
we did it. It's a
Anyway,
flex. It's a flex.
it is
Anyway.
a little flex, yeah. So no, I think these are all good examples. Obviously, it is a relevant conversation, and then it's helping people say like, yeah, what do we how do we look at the right things? And so yeah, you guys mentioned other areas where it's like, okay, well, is it like a process issue? Is it really like maybe our processes are not good and that's why we're having problems? Or what was some of the other ones you guys mentioned? There was like other
I think it's communication tools and it's
communication. Okay.
yeah, like your task management and your communication management and yeah, it's all the systems that interlink together and how those work together. And I do
Yeah.
think that there are moments where it's like, oh, I've picked up, I've worked here 3 years. I've picked up different roles and jobs and people have forgotten that I picked those up and they're still getting done. I think that happens. But I think when somebody comes to me and says either I'm overloaded or I think my people are overloaded or my people are saying they're overloaded, I love the exercise of, okay, manager, you write down what you think your people are doing. And then people, you write down what you're actually doing. And when we put those two things together, I have never once, not one time, ever seen them be similar. Never, not one time ever. Usually the manager has a very different idea of what the job actually entails and what they're actually doing versus what the employee is actually doing. And so that usually causes a lot of disharmony because it's misaligned. So I generally like to start with that exercise when I hear that these things are happening within an organization or a department.
Yeah, I think that is a good activity. What were you gonna add, Stephanie?
Oh, I was going to agree with that too. And just say, yeah, it's a good activity because I think a lot of times managers or leaders in general are just enough removed from maybe some of the frontline work their team is doing that they've actually lost track of like what it looks like or feels like to actually do that job now. And like a lot of times managers were promoted from those roles. So it's not like they don't know what that job is at all. They're not clueless. They do care, but it's been long enough or enough things have changed that we don't actually have a good read on what it's like to do that job. Another question that we'll ask often when we hear like, oh, the team is overloaded, is like, okay, well, what would be considered like a normal workload for this position? And like, is that person above and beyond it? Because a lot of times what we'll hear from employees is like, well, I'm working so many extra hours, I'm doing all of this. And that's where, to your point, Dan, I think it's really helpful to see that list. Like, what are you working on? What is taking up your time? And like, do I, as a manager, need to intervene or get you more support? Or do we have a broken process or tool? But I also think a lot of times leaders struggle to answer the question of what's normal and what is a normal workload. So like, is what's happening right now really like exceptional? And maybe there was this giant wave of work that came in that was unexpected or surprising, but that's not our typical? Or is it really just that it's kept ramping up? And a lot of times people will answer that, but they start talking about specific people and just like individual capacities. And that's not quite the same thing. And so I wondered maybe if like we could talk about that because I think people stumble over that a little bit, the difference between like when you as a leader look at a job of how you determine workload and capacity for that position versus here's what this person's maybe individual capacity is.
And that's where it feels like you do have to create the baseline versus looking at the person a little bit too. To me, my perspective is that it seems like you have to create the baseline for maybe a department first to understand. And then when we see that maybe an individual is not working within that capacity, there's issues there, then you can be able to focus in more and say like, okay, what are you doing that I can see is different than the person over here? So I think that's valuable, but I think we could talk about all after you add your thoughts, Diana, but I'd love to be able to dive more into like, how do you start to calculate that for your department specifically?
Yeah, I was thinking of a time where a design department was struggling with different times to get artwork done, right? And each designer had like very different times of getting artwork done. And so they just like tracked each designer and said, how long does it take you to do this type of work, right? It's like, how long does it take you to create a logo? How long does it take you to create a brand guide, right? And it was just like different types of work. And they measured the times. And then they all came back together and they were shocked to see that some of the designers were crazy fast and crazy effective. And some of the designers were like really slow, but still effective. And so they were like, the slower designers were like, wait a minute, how do you do that? I don't think anyone's ever showed me. I've never seen you work. Like, how do you do that? Because I do value your work. You are a great artist, but how are you so crazy fast at it? And so then they got to have the conversation of like, oh, this is not hard. This is how I do it, and change the patterns of how they work. And I think sometimes just showing the information to somebody will help them see that they are just not on the same level. I had the same thing happen in a hospital where there was a group of technicians, and this one technician was very, 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 very slow at something. And they just showed the data like all of your colleagues do it in this amount of time, and you're doing it in this amount of time. And then that person was like, what? Really? Like, I'm going to go have some of my other people show me what they're doing. I'm doing something horribly wrong. And then it was corrected in like 5 weeks. I mean, it just fixed itself. So sometimes I think just showing some of the data and saying you're falling behind where others are will help people see, like, oh, I'm just not doing something right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely helpful. And a lot of that's like, yeah, you're gonna have that's time intensive work to say, like either you're tracking your time or you're meeting
Mhm.
with your team regularly to be able to have a good understanding of what else is going on. I think about even like our team because I don't think for a little while we didn't have a good read on like what is actual capacity like for some of our team, and then how do we know when it's time to hire for sure. So like we had a conversation about it, and mine was more of like a gut of like, you know what, whenever we have like this number of clients individually, right, then that feels like high capacity. And so then I think we had a conversation to where it was like, okay, then how do we put a number to that in terms of like revenue? And then when we know, okay, at this point is when we would actually need to hire. So I don't know if you could even like speak into that more, Diana, like how did we do that? And how,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of years of data
yeah.
all glommed together and also gut feeling. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
weird because there was a little bit of both. There is a little bit of like subjectivity, but if the people doing the work and the executives showing the data kind of agree, like, okay, we're good with this number. And yes, Bethany, who manages this team, is like, yeah, that feels about right. Then we know we're on the right page, right? If we were very off, if I had said, no, it should be this crazy number, and Bethany was like, we'll die. There's no way we can get that done, then it's never going to happen, right? Or I'm just going to continually like burn people out and churn through employees, which I also don't want to do. So it was a little bit of like, here's the financial side and here's the practical, applicable doing the work side.
Yes. And I think that's the key part of it, that it's like, okay, for, leaders, I think if you're trying to get a good understanding of those requests from people and your, frontline staff or your managers are even coming to you and saying like, hey, it feels like we're drowning, we need to hire somebody else. Then I think the lesson to what you just said, Diana, is like, don't go into your like executive office and say, okay, well, we're going to set this goal of like what your team's capacity is or what your goal is, and then say, well, if you're not meeting that, then like we're not going to hire somebody. I think it has to be really hand in hand to say, okay, what do you see as high capacity, or what do you think is realistic? What's the experience showed you week to week? And then let's also go in with like the other side of it and pull in sort of some numbers and some realistic, just numbers and goal setting that we can add to that. But I think what I've seen sometimes is that, it's like, okay, then the leaders looking at it and being like, it doesn't make any sense. They should be fine. They should be totally fine based on what I see on the spreadsheet. And meanwhile, people are like, the spreadsheet is not, it doesn't mean, it says you're not here. You don't feel the spreadsheet the way that I do. And so marrying those. So I think that that's just a good piece of advice, is like, they kind of has to be both.
Yeah. Yeah. You said exactly what I was thinking, Bethany, of like, don't do this in isolation as a leader. And I think that is the trick of this. Because the hard truth is there is no magic formula for calculating capacity, and data is powerful. And Diana, what you were saying of like, we did use data to make this decision on our team, and you probably have data you can track to help know like, how much work were we doing when it felt like this versus when it felt like this? But understanding that like, data is not the whole story, and that leaders who we've seen do this successfully don't do it in isolation, and they bring their team in, and you can be the mirror for the data of, okay, like I found these couple interesting data points, and can we look at like what projects was the team working on when we were doing this, or how many people were on the team in that moment? Do you remember what it felt like to be in that space? And then like, let's talk about where we are today and how does it feel and what is it looking like? And I think that is the secret sauce, I guess, to this, or the magic trick, is that you don't do it alone. Don't sit in your office and just crunch numbers and do data and then come to your team and say, great news, you all are at 80% capacity, which is high, but so we're not going to hire anyone until you all are at 100% capacity. Because I think the other thing is when people do that, I think we all kind of chuckled when I said it, because like that feels so crummy. Like if your team is already coming to you saying, we feel overwhelmed, or we feel overworked, or I'm putting in extra hours to get these things done. And then you're telling me, well, you're not at 100% capacity. So when you're at 100%, come back, and just realizing that's also not how people work. That's how machines work. And those type of data calculations were created to measure machines, not human beings. So that would just be my caution of like, I'm sure you could go on the worldwide internet right now and find some formulas and things. It's not to say that those are wholly unhelpful, but just remembering those don't take into account that human element of your team.
Yeah. And I think if you're an employee feeling this and saying like, I'm overworked and I'm tired, I would, and I know that you've probably gone to your manager and been like, I am tired and I'm doing too much work. I think it would be a good time to evaluate what are you working on versus what should you be working on, and asking your manager to help you prioritize some of those things, or be able to delegate some of those things or remove those from your plate, and also evaluate the tools and resources you have, and are you using those the most effectively that you can.
Yeah. And like, I mean, to add on to that, to think about like, are there like made up rules that you have placed on yourself with how you're doing your job? I think that happens a lot too, where we feel like trapped as maybe a frontline employee who is like, this is the situation I'm in and I don't have any power. And I think it's like, there might be some strict guardrails around it, but like, what has actually been told to you and what has not? And like, start kind of asking those questions of yourself. And then the other thing, and this is for both frontline manager, top level leaders, also, I think, because I think you kind of mentioned it, Stephanie, too, is try to like pull yourself out of like the moment that you're in right now, too, and look bigger picture and say, is this just a moment in time? Is this just a season of really busy that I'm kind of getting lost in and frustrated by? Or is this not typical? And can I recognize, I guess this is to the data, can I recognize any patterns throughout the year that we can kind of start to predict and we can talk about within our season, within our specific industry, that it picks up here, but then we know that it tends to drop off, later in the year? Or does it just keep picking up and we truly do need to add more people to the team? And so that's just another area that I look at.
Yeah, that's good. I think, yeah, sometimes we do get lost in the emotion of the moment and like how overwhelming it feels or how busy we feel or how little downtime we have during the day. And we start making decisions based on that for like our future selves and sometimes even changing things that really don't need to be changed in the business or the company because, well, that's like would make it feel good. And it gives you this sense of control when you change something in that moment. But yeah, I liked how you said that, Bethany, of like, think a little bigger picture from this moment. Understand, like, are there some patterns or trends developing, or is it really been this just like very steady incline in the amount of work? Because what we would also hope is if there's a very steady incline in the amount of work, you should also see that reflected in your revenue if your organization is healthy. And so that might then be like, yeah, maybe we do need to hire because now we consistently have more work. We can see the trajectory of that already happening and we can see the revenue coming alongside it that would give us the budget to do those things. So yeah, I think it's just like figuring out like what decisions do you actually need to make right now and like don't overdo it either. Like don't go change everything in every tool or every system because it feels uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay. Well, what are we not talking about here? Have we missed any specific topic within this?
I think for employees, I want to say that I know it's super hard to look around and be like, why aren't we just hiring? Like, I just need more help. And, as the person who looks at all the finance side of it and the person who wants to make sure that everyone has jobs all the time, I think it's easy to forget that that there is a break even number and there is like a comfortable number and there is a balance of I want to give my current employees raises and do good things for them and up their benefits and do all that stuff versus hiring a new person when we're just not right there yet, but I know everyone's busy. So there's a really big tightrope to walk there. And if there's ways to eliminate things that you don't need to be doing and redundancies that can be moved off your plate and things like that, like do that first and then do everything you can to really show that your plate is full instead of just being like, my plate is full. I think it's easier to go and show like, no, I have done this. I have done this. I'm working on these things. My plate is actually full. Is there an opportunity to install a new resource here or a new tool or hire some people? Right.
What's not a priority anymore of like, are there
Right.
like,
Yes.
okay, I was doing this thing and it was sort of an extra thing, but I no longer can do this. So can we just have a conversation? I think the approach
Yeah.
of just being able to come to your leaders and say, like, if you're feeling that overwhelmed, like make sure you're just communicating that and saying, I'm
Totally.
feeling overwhelmed. I don't know for sure what it is. Maybe it is that we need to hire. Maybe it's something else that's going on. But I think the approach needs to be like, ask a lot of questions about one, just needing some support, but then also just not assuming that, like, if your leaders say we can't hire, you can ask some questions, I think, about that to just say, like, oh, okay, like, help me understand how we're thinking about that. And when
Mm-hmm.
would we pull that trigger and how, all of those different things. Because sometimes if you're not communicating, maybe they don't, I mean, maybe they think like, man, I feel like we're doing really well. And if everybody seems like to be in a good place and we don't need to hire right now and we can make more money, then like, awesome, let's keep doing that. So if that's not the case, then like, I think communicate it and then just not going in with arrogance to say like, why aren't we hiring? We should be hiring and not just humbling yourself a little bit to stop and ask the questions, because there might be, to Diana's point, there might be some factors that you're not even thinking about or considering. There might be some outside things happening that are impacting the business that you don't have your eyes on, that your leaders are thinking about and saying like, we would love to, but there's this thing over here that we're just keeping an eye on and we want to protect our team right now. And hopefully they're communicating that anyways. But if not, I think just make sure you're asking questions instead.
Yeah, that's such good advice because I think often, like as employees, we do forget that we can ask those questions and we go and we say, we're so overwhelmed. Can we please hire someone? And we get the no. And like that kind of is the end of the conversation. And then, like, sometimes we get resentful of that, or you start imagining like your bosses are just like Scrooge McDuck sitting on piles of money and not caring about everybody else on the team. And that is so rarely true, right? Very rarely true that that's actually what's happening. So I loved that advice, Bethany, of like just ask more questions. Like you might ask your manager or leader, like, so what are the things that you're watching that would tell us we could hire someone else? Or what would need to happen in our business for us to be able to hire someone else? Because the answer is usually a little larger than just like a dollar number revenue coming in. But if the answer that you get is like simply put, like it's a cash flow issue, then you could ask more questions, be like, okay, well, when was the last time like maybe our team did an expense review? Could we look at and see if there's areas that maybe we could cut back on now? Or maybe think about the other requests you've put in lately of like, well, we asked for this, we asked for this, we asked for that. Would you be willing to wait to get some of those things if that meant you could hire someone? Like a lot of times there are things that we could change or move around, but it's being open to that, which means you're going to probably need to be open to some feedback too, of like understanding how maybe your team or your role is running, and are there opportunities to make it more financially efficient for the company. Not that controlling expenses is the answer for everything, but it can help a lot if we are really tight in different months to help us get to a good place faster. And maybe then, yeah, then maybe next year everybody gets new computers or whatever. Like, would you be willing to wait a little longer for that if that meant it could get help? But you don't know the answers to those questions until you ask. You don't know if the decisions that you're making are helpful to the company until you ask. So yeah, I loved that advice. I think just ask more questions if you get the answer like, no, we can't hire right now because of money. Like what would it take for us to get there?
What are
Yeah.
the options? What are our
Yeah.
options? You know?
And then my advice for managers is if your team is coming to you telling you that they're overloaded, listen to them. Listen to them and figure it out. The thing that I hear the most is like, well, I used to do that job and I did it just fine. I hate that. I hate that so much. Like the job has changed, the tools have changed, the work has changed. I know you used to do the job, but it is different. It's different from pandemic. It's different from tools. It's, like everything has changed in the workforce. And so if your employees are saying they're overworked, listen to them and try to figure it out with them.
Yeah, yeah. And even if that is true and you did have to do the work in that way, like, did
True.
you love it?
Good
Was it the
point.
best? Or
Good
are you
point.
saying like, I just struggled through it and it made me stronger, which may be true, but
Well,
like, do you
yeah.
did you love it?
Yeah,
Why
like, do
make
you want
others
your team
suffer?
to suffer? Yeah, do
Yeah.
you want your team to suffer? Or like I'll hear people say, well, I guess then I just have more capacity than other people, or I'm just better at this. And I'm like, and you feel good that no one on your team can do these jobs well, and that's like a proud thing for you that you've made these jobs so challenging. You're the only one that can do them. So you're gonna just do everything because no one else is as smart as you. Yeah, like
We'll
that's not
give
a
you
good.
a medal and then you still have to fix the problem. Like you get the gold
Yeah.
star and we still have
We'll send you a sticker in the mail if that's what you need to move past that. But yeah, like that's not very nice and humble either.
See, ladies and gentlemen, spicy. It's a
spice.
spicy
It's a
afternoon.
spice.
It finally
We
happened.
just
Yeah.
saw just a little snippet of it. That's
Just
good.
buck
Okay.
up, buttercup. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't like all your attitude. I think you're better than everybody. Anyways, okay. Well, I feel like this was a pretty good conversation. I hope it's helpful. Like we said, since this has been coming up, surely somebody who is listening is like, oh my gosh, yes, I am so glad they talked about this because we have been trying to figure this out at work and I don't know the answer. What's the right direction to take? So if you are kind of in the middle of this and you want to ask us some questions about it, please reach out to us. Diana keeps our contact info at the end of this every episode. So please reach out to us or go to our website, peoplecentric.com. You can fill out a contact form, I think is how it's set up there. Yeah.
Yep.
So we would love to hear from you all and are happy to help talk through these kinds of things with you if you're trying to work through it. All right. I hope you have a great week and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.